Diller of Marlinton, West Virginia. Thank you for sitting down to talk about not only banjos, but talk about banjo history. And I got to say, if it wasn't for you, I wouldn't be here. But you not only taught me how to play banjo, you taught me a reverence for the music, and you started to teach me about community. And for all of that, I thank you. As a matter of fact, I would like to dedicate this entire series to you.
Well, all right.
So let's start off. How did you first start getting into the banjo?
My mother's from down here in Pocahontas County, and she married my dad. He'd come in from Pennsylvania in the 30s, and I was born in 46 after both of them came back from the war. And I was about 4 or 5 years old, and I was walking down the streets of Charleston. I saw an old man sitting on the sidewalk. My parents didn't really want anything to do with him, but he was sitting there playing with the banjo, had pencils in a cup, and that stuck in my mind all those years. January '66, I had been at Morgantown, WVU, for 3 semesters in the summer school, and I dropped out and went in the Navy. And I remember telling my cousin, we were carrying water to make syrup out of, I want to play the banjo.
Just out of the blue?
Yeah. Lee Hammond's the old man that I've spent so much time with, he was born in 1883. His thing that he said a lot was, don't never spoil a good notion. I've had some notions in my life, and some of them have been pretty good. One of them was to record the Hammondses, and nobody here wanted anything to do with that, and so I just went out on my own and did it. And when I did that, I got a lot of stigma attached to me for doing that.
I'm not sure I understand why.
West Virginians are been taught to be ashamed of themselves, ashamed of who they are, ashamed of their culture, ashamed of their history. This place is just eat up with shame. It permeates the whole culture. And this place is just full of despair and depression. I grew up in a beer joint down Hillsboro. In the 50s and early 60s, my aunt and uncle ran it, and I lived all over the county with relatives, anything to keep from living at home. What was I hearing? Well, I was hearing the music on the jukebox. What I was internalizing was Little Richard, Johnny Cash, and Jerry Lee Lewis.
Yeah.
And I finally figured out a few years ago that they were the ones who influenced my music. And I've been teaching my students here this week, and I've been showing them where the music comes from. Not where it's gone, but where it come from. And I've been playing these old black blues musicians. Their rhythms are just as much source of this music. People say, well, Diller studied with the Hammondses. No, Diller didn't study with the Hammonds. They were my neighbors. What the Hammondses did was they accepted me because I'd been booted out of the Navy. Came back here, and I was trying to figure out how in the world to pick up pieces. But when you're mentally ill, people don't want anything to do with you. So who were the people that accepted me? The old mountain people. Who took me in? It was Lee Hammond's. He was one Hammond's family. There was another Hammond's family that became famous because of the Library of Congress.
Well, I know that when they took you in, they started bringing out instruments, and you started to listen.
No.
How did that start?
I asked them to bring out instruments.
Okay.
I asked them to.
You were still wanting to play the banjo at this point, right?
Yeah. I asked Sherman something about playing the banjo, and he said, well, sir boys, I think I got my brother down here at Stillwell, and I believe I'll take you down there. So we got in my car and drove down there. Well, here was Burl living with his sister Maggie, another sister Rowie, and another sister Emmy. And they were up against it. They moved off of Williams River, off that cold mountain up there, and were living with Burl where it's a little warmer. But there was, of course, no running water or no
electricity.
They had electricity, but it was like these old houses, one bulb in the center of the room.
Sure.
I believe I had a banjo with me, and so they played on it some for me, and then Burl got the fiddle out. Well, I wasn't interested in the fiddle at all, but I listened. I had a GI Bill, $100 a month to go to college on. but what I did also was saved up and I bought a reel-to-reel tape recorder and started recording. Of course, the Library of Congress found out about it, and so they came in, they went through all of my tapes and picked out what they wanted, and then came back and re-recorded it.
What inspired you to record it in the first place?
A notion.
Were you afraid that it would be lost?
Yeah, I cared about the old stories. Mm-hmm. That's what was down deep, because I grew up with the old stories.
Yeah.
With the Hammondses, at that time I was wanting the banjo.
Yeah.
And then the fiddle came, and Maggie started singing some, and nobody had paid any attention. And the last time they were really playing the music, that was around 1930. Mm-hmm. And that was when the timber boom was over. The land had been raped and plundered and pillaged, and the culture was gone, the interpersonal relationships, the community was gone. And so I came back in and started visiting them and was showing some interest, a lot of interest in their music and who they were and what did they do, just being themselves. Mm-hmm. There was no, I'm going to try to prove something or anything. They were just like musicians, most of them in West Virginia. Because they embraced me, it wasn't the music so much, it was accepting me. My mental illness was, I'm bipolar. The music was rescuing me from suicide. And the Hammondses rescued me from suicide. I'm sure they sensed it.
So you're learning about the music in the community.
I'm not really learning about it as in studying it. I'm just around people who accept me.
Yeah.
That was the main thing. And I started hearing some stories, and I was just sucking them up, because I'd been doing that since I was a little boy. For some reason, I was just sucking up the stories. But I wasn't learning about the music as such. I was just hearing the music, because I don't really know about music. I don't really know about the banjo. But I grew up in these mountains, so I can feel it.
Yeah.
Here we are. We've got the mouth of this holler, and there's a long holler here, and right across Dave's Run, there's another long holler, and there's a mountainside over there, and these creeks, they go like this, and the roads go like this, and this music goes with the lay of the land.
Yeah.
And the problem is if you grow up on a sidewalk and you don't pay attention, you grow up on a sidewalk, you start playing your music, which is just like that. And this music is so extremely fragile.
Tell me about that. How did you come to that conclusion?
The stuff is just so powerful, so extremely powerful, but it's also fragile. Mm-hmm. You've got to really be careful, because the spirit of the music will walk away and you won't know it. If you start using it for your own glory, the spirit of this music, the spirit of these mountains, I operate in another world, the spirit of the Lord. They walk out. Mm-hmm. You start using that to manipulate other people and to get yourself ahead. Mm-hmm. It won't stand it. Won't stand it. That's what I'm talking about. Money and power. You start using it for your own glory, it won't work.
So that spirit wants you to look within and develop what's within?
This can't, to Diller, this can never, ever, ever play music. It can look at dots on a page, but I operate in a world where there's spirit and there's heart. What's happened? There is something that takes place, a brokenness. I quoted my seminary professor, because my instructor said, don't ever forget that everybody you meet is standing in a pool of tears. Well, what do people standing in a pool of tears need? They need music. It's fragile, but it's powerful. You all got a brokenness in there. And I want you to play your music from that brokenness, because this music is a celebration of life. And these modal tunes from Central West Virginia, what they insist on if they're played properly is that you face your own death. Mm-hmm. Until you face your own death, you ain't ready to live.
Because in the face of death, all irrelevance falls away.
Yeah.
That's your point.
There's nothing like knowing that you're going to get hung tomorrow morning to start getting your priorities straight. Life has just beat on me so much, but I have to count it as a blessing because I've been called to the ministry a long time ago. Mm. How in the world can you minister if you ain't been broke? Yeah. All you got's just fluff. You can't tell anything. And this is what the music's about. Until I absorb part of your pain, which is empathy. That's what teaching you is about.
Let me play student for a minute. If I come here and I've got the pain and I've stripped away the irrelevance and I'm open and I'm vulnerable now, how is the music going to minister to me?
Well, first of all, I have to let you know that I love you.
I get that.
I don't have to really like you one way or the other, but my boss says, I gotta love you.
Yeah.
And one of the ways I can show you that I love you is to let you know that I will give you every single thing that I can possibly give you. Try to teach you to be better musician than I am. And that means that I got to do stuff to call you out of you, because I got to do stuff to bring you to the point that you start letting down those walls to protect yourself. Well, the only way you can open up is if I open up first.
And that's what you do.
Be vulnerable. I have to be vulnerable. That's what the music's about, is being vulnerable. Don't tell me that, come in here and tell me you know 50 tunes. If you tell me you know 50 tunes, I just wonder, how in the world can you say that? Really know tunes is like, how many friends can you really have? Close friends over a lifetime. You know, maybe this one's there for a while, and that's the way it is with tunes.
You were my teacher, and everything you've told me happened. You sat with me, you understood where I was, and you wanted to make sure I learned it right.
No, be careful with the word right. I wanted you, show me your hand. See, if we looked at it close, there's a different fingerprints. You've got your pulse inside of you. I've got my pulse. Mm-hmm. I don't want any Diller clones. I don't work towards that. I want you sitting beside of you. I got to show you some stuff. But you can do it. Yeah. That's the thing that I want my students to know. You're good enough. As long as you respect the music, you let this come out. I want to give you as much of my heritage as I can, because this is my heritage. Yeah. But I want you to take it back, say, to New York City, and you go ahead and walk in the sidewalks down there, New York City, with your pulse. But then I want you to start paying attention. Whoa, look at these mountains. You know, you got a mountain over there in New York City that's as high as that mountain over there, maybe. And you got valleys, and you got all kinds of valleys going in and out. Well, I want you to play the ambience, these mountains in New York City with the wind blowing and all that kind of stuff, and all these different people groups here, 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 here. I want you to play that. Say, I'm playing Manhattan Mountain Banjo. Yeah, I hadn't thought about it like that. I'm playing Manhattan Mountain Banjo.
I want to tell a story on you. When I sat at the Jam on a Saturday night in Lansing, Michigan, with a room full of people that basically probably hung out at Elderly Instruments, there were 40 or 50 fabulous musicians sitting around us. You came down the stairs and there was one place next to me, and you said, is anybody sitting there? And I said, no. And so you sat down and you said, now remember, no notes. You can't play any notes. I said, yes, Dwight. So there was this guy came in, stood across from us, And we played a tune. He was playing banjo. He's been one of your students. He was really good. He was not making a show of himself. He was playing the way you instructed. And at one point you stopped and said, "No, I want you to watch him. He's the best musician in here." And I said, "Yeah, I've heard him play. He's pretty good." And you said, "No, no, no. You watch him." Played a couple more numbers. At that point he kind of looked around. And where he'd been the best banjo player in the room, he went and he put his banjo down. And he picked up a guitar. And he came back, and the next 3 or 4 songs he started to play guitar. And you said, "Did you see that?" And I said, "Yeah, I saw that." And he said, "That's why he's the best musician in the room." The tune was so important to him. He listened to it carefully. And he heard banjos and he heard fiddles. And what was missing was the instrument that he could bring, because it was about the tune. To make the tune the best it could be. There was this reverence.
Yeah.
Now that story was probably the most profound story that stuck with me from my experience with you. And there's something else I want to say to you. It's about showing compassion and love.
Yep.
And loving on each individual person.
Yep.
You pay attention to the one. You've always paid attention to the one. I was one of the ones. And there are hundreds, if not thousands, of ones like me that you have touched. You demonstrated compassion, and you came alongside them and gave them everything you have and said, "Trust this, reach deep into this, look around yourself, and continue to grow and minister yourself through this."
I help you.
Yeah.
You're gone. If I can help you again, great. But I want you to do it on your own. I want you to fight your own way through.
But I want to say thank you for that.
Well, I appreciate it. But it's what I'm about. It's what I do.
Yeah.
I'm driven. I have to do that. I have to do it that way, no matter what it costs. And there hasn't been hardly any money.
Well, that's a part of it.
Yeah. If I'm talking about the music, well then why don't I play a little bit of music? Last thing I want to say then, it's not about me. It's not about me. It's not about me.